Hi there, Pete Matthew here. Hope you're okay. Just wanted to add a little note at the beginning of this episode to let you know that I will be taking a couple of weeks off from the podcast on doctor's orders. I've just been battling fatigue and general exhaustion, which we've been sort of doing tests and stuff. There's nothing physically wrong, but clearly I just need to take a bit of a breather. So we'll be taking probably 2 weeks out, and we'll be carrying on with season 17 in early July. But just wanted to say thank you for your support. Thank you for all the kind messages on Facebook. I put a post about it in the Facebook community. So, thank you for your support and all your kind words there. And in general, you guys make it very easy to keep going. But now I just need to take a breather so that I can be back fighting fit in a couple of weeks' time. Okay, thanks so much. Enjoy this episode. This is episode number 7 in season 17.
Hi, folks, and welcome to the Meaningful Money Podcast. This is season 17, episode 7. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you put your finances in order. My name is Pete Matthew, and I'm going to share with you everything you need to know and everything you need to do to secure your financial future. I'm here to help you make sense of money. Here we are. Once again, great to have you with me. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, we're talking about retirement planning, okay? And eventually, life in retirement generally settles into a nice rhythm. There's a whole load of generalizations here, okay? But most folks get to a point where they've got everything that they need. You know, they've taken the big holidays, bought the camper van or whatever that they promised themselves that they wanted to do. And they eventually sort of find a level of balance in their daily routine. That's exactly as it should be, of course, but it presents potentially some challenges and also some opportunities. So I want to talk a little bit about that today, settling essentially for a very long retirement, hopefully. So after the main body of the show, as usual, I read a review out, quick ad for Meaningful Academy, and particularly the phase of Meaningful Academy that relates to this season. If you're in the run into retirement or at retirement, then the third phase, the retirement planning phase of Meaningful Academy is for you, and we're going to be doing a founders launch on that very soon. More details later, you know the drill by now. But before any of that, of course, this podcast continues to be brought to you with the help of my friends at 7 Investment Management, who've been helping me out here on the show since the spring of 2011, which is just incredible. So I'm ever so grateful to them. They've got a fancy new logo and general graphic look and everything. So do check out what they're up to. They're at 7im.co.uk. That's the number 7im.co.uk. Go check him out. Okay, so I've titled this episode The Longest Holiday. And that kind of harkens back to one of those things that you hear when you become a financial advisor, or at least back when I trained back in the late 90s. You know, I was told to speak to clients about retirement in terms of the longest holiday of their lives. And it's kind of true, isn't it, really, if you think about it? If you define holidays as not working, or perhaps just doing the things you enjoy. But however you define or describe it, retirement is a unique phase of life, and hopefully, God willing, a long one. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about today. Remember, notes, links from today's show. That's the only link you need to remember. Everything is there. meaningfulmoney.tv/RP7 for retirement planning, episode 7. That's what this season is all about, retirement planning. So meaningfulmoney.tv/RP7. Quite a few links today. So definitely check that out. Let's have a look first at what you need to know. I am looking forward to getting back into my studio, I have to say. So it's a bit of a faff. Nothing's quite to hand like it should normally be. Okay, so first thing we need to know is that retirement is hopefully a long time. And obviously I say hopefully because, of course, none of us know what's around the corner. I've worked with plenty of client couples over the years who have looked forward to a retirement together after working life, only to, in the end, just have a few years, and on a couple of occasions, only a few months before one of them passed away. And that's always sort of deeply tragic, really. Offers a salutary lesson to enjoy the journey towards retirement, not just the destination. But even if we retire at state pension age, there's a very good chance that one partner in a couple will live until past age 90, potentially. So that's at least 24 years from, retirement. That's if you retire roughly at normal age, possibly quite a few more years than that. If you're thinking of retiring early, potentially retirement could be 3 or 4 decades long. And that really represents more than a third of the average life expectancy. So I don't know about you, but I often don't sort of think of retirement like that. I kind of think of it as the end game, perhaps, but in football terms, this is like the last half hour of a 90-minute game, potentially. And if you were watching like a crucial match, World Cup or an FA Cup final match, and there were 30 minutes left, you would think that there was everything to play for still. And I think it's important to have that perspective for retirement. Retirement really isn't a wind down, certainly not in the first decade or two. This potentially long holiday means that you've got to think long term with your money, as we'll see in a bit. In my experience as an advisor, people vastly underestimate their probable longevity. I hear it all the time. I even had a client once look me in the eye, tell me with absolute certainty he would be dead before age 75. He's now nearly 85 and still going strong, which weirdly he's almost annoyed about sometimes when I speak to him. There is quite a cool little longevity calculator on the ONS website. I'll put a link in the show notes to that. But I put in my age and gender, and my average life expectancy, I'm 45 now. My average life expectancy is 84. Right? It gives me a 1 in 4 chance of living till age 93 and a 1 in 10 chance of living till age 98. If I put in that I'm a 65-year-old female, then the average life expectancy is 87, average, right? So it means half of all people will live longer than that. And there's a 4.9% chance of living till age 100. Now, obviously, averages cover a whole multitude of possible outcomes, right? For every centenarian, there's somebody who dies way too early. But it's no good planning to go early because you probably won't. We need to think long-term. Retirement, hopefully, is a long-term thing. Second thing we need to know is that life is unpredictable. Okay, it's probably too much to hope for to retire, have a perfect 25 or 30-year retirement, and then quietly pass away in our sleep. Chances are things are going to be thrown at us by the fates, and we're going to need to deal with those. Could be illness. Certainly, that's the biggest concern of any of my clients that are retired, and quite a few that are not. Nobody wants to get ill, obviously, but there's a good chance that we'll battle some kind of serious illness as we get older. And it might not be your ill health, of course, but someone else's, like an elderly parent, that impacts on your life somehow. Maybe it'll be relationship challenges. Divorce in retirement is increasingly common, obviously causes massive financial upheaval, apart from everything else that comes with it. Or it might be relationship changes for your kids or other family members, which you might have to get involved with financially or otherwise. External things like global pandemics, massive recessions, stock market crashes, political upheaval, all of these things can impact your life both directly and indirectly. But one thing is certain, life is uncertain, right? But despite all that, there's no logic in throwing up your hands and singing "Que sera, sera." Planning is still important. You can't just wing it through life. We obviously still need to make plans, even if we know they're going to have to adapt to the changeability of life. We'll all have things that we want to achieve, places we want to travel to, things we want to see and do, and we should plan to do them all while at the same time reconciling ourselves to the fact that we might not get the chance if life, the fates, God, the universe, if that all decides otherwise. So, in light of probably greater longevity than we think, and an unpredictable path through life in retirement, we should definitely make the most of every minute. And even though this is a finance podcast, right, I'm talking about making the most of life, not just money. We need to think about how to set things up to achieve this. So let's have a look at everything you need to do. Crashed my voice with the little audio sting there. How many times have I done that? Okay, long-term listeners will know. Probably 1 in 4 times I do that. Okay, first thing we need to do is to plan carefully. Everything starts with a plan. Regular listeners will know that I will always describe myself as a financial planner, not a financial advisor. And the reason for that, among other things, is that I believe that planning comes first before taking action, financially speaking. Otherwise, how do we know whether or not our actions are correctly directed? Only when we have something of a direction in place can we take the first step. Planning usually starts with the end in mind, by which I mean we need to define what success means. That can be in terms of achievement, like maybe taking that big expensive holiday in a few years, or helping your daughter get on the housing ladder with a house deposit. Or it can mean that life looks a certain way, like you live to a certain budget, or you always change the car every 3 years, or excuse me, you find time to volunteer for a project that's important to you. If you want to identify what's important to you, which will help you then define a successful retirement, you need to look no further than the 3 Kinder questions developed by financial planner George Kinder, the father really of something called financial life planning. And I've read these questions out before, and I'm going to do them again now, but a little bit more quickly. For a bit more detail around these 3 questions, listen back to Season 4, Episode 2. There's a link in the notes. Okay, 3 questions. You ready? Here's the first one. First one says, imagine that you are financially secure, that you have enough money to take care of your needs both now and in the future. How would you live your life? Would you change anything? Let yourself go. Don't hold back on your dreams. Describe a life that is complete and richly yours. Now, if you're retired, then the imagine you are financially secure part of that question is interesting. The question essentially assumes unlimited funds, and that's probably not the case. If you're not retired yet and you are still accumulating, you might think this through slightly differently than if you're already drawing down on your accumulated wealth. The question is really designed to free you of the constraints of finance, really, so that you can design an ideal life. But maybe you can do that even within the constraints that you find yourself in at the cusp of or in retirement. I think probably this is the question to focus on the least in this context, specifically talking about retirement, but definitely give it some thought. What would a perfect life look like in retirement for you? Here's question 2. Now imagine that you visit your doctor who tells you that you have only 5 to 10 years to live. You won't ever feel sick, but you'll have no notice of the moment of your death. What will you do in the time you have remaining? Will you change your life? And how will you do it? Note that this question does not assume unlimited funds. Okay, now, might be 5 to 10 years, as per the question. Might be 20 to 25 years that you've got. Who knows? Most retired folks are very aware of their mortality, perhaps more so than younger people very often. So this question will definitely help you identify the more important things in your life and maybe highlight any changes that you need to make. So it's a good question for that. And then finally, question 3. Finally, imagine that your doctor shocks you with the news that you only have 24 hours left to live. Notice what feelings arise as you confront your very real mortality. Ask yourself, what did you miss? Who did you not get to be? What did you not get to do? So obviously this is where things get pretty serious, right? This is about highlighting regrets before they become actual regrets. Putting you into this theoretical position of having 24 hours left to live is designed to make you think, man, if that was true, what did I not get to do? Who did I not get to be? So the answer to this question should help you to make sure that you can make changes now so that those regrets that you felt answering the question never actually come to be. I keep coming back to these questions because they really do focus the mind. And from that, planning is the natural next step. What do we need to do in light of the answers to these questions? What do we need to fix? Okay, it really is designing an ideal retirement. And not just in monetary terms, in fact, absolutely not in monetary terms, but in life terms, family, relationships, experiences, all the important stuff. What do we need to fix in order to get somewhere close to the ideal life that we've designed? And of course, once we've got that, we can work out the next steps that we need to take. So I've covered planning in some detail in past episodes, particularly in season 15. So I'll make sure that there's links to that in the show notes. And even though that season was aimed mostly at people in the accumulation stage of their financial lives, there's still loads of things to carry over if you're retired already. But planning should identify next steps and then the things you need to do. And after that, you need to set things up to minimize effort. That's the second thing we need to do. Set things up to minimize effort. One thing that, to me at least, is vital for a retirement which minimizes financial stress and hopefully maximizes some of those things that we identified with those questions is to set up your finances so that you spend as little time as possible engaging directly with your money. Now, I know that for some people listening to this, managing their finances is a hobby. It's a delight to them even, but I reckon that's the exception rather than the rule. Most people, myself included, find managing finances a chore and would definitely benefit from a largely hands-off system that enables them to spend more time doing other things that they actually really do enjoy. So there are a few things you can do to make your financial management as easy as possible. Firstly, keep things simple. Don't have too many accounts of whatever type without good reason. It's perfectly okay to have one platform with one of each major account type on there. I do also, of course, see the benefit of having at least some platform diversification. So you might consider having your ISA on one platform and a pension on another, if you want to. I've mentioned before that I've seen people rate chasing by setting up an elaborate series of bank or building society accounts and moving the same money between them each month to sort of try and get the higher rate. Generally speaking, I urge my clients against doing that because it just introduces complexity for relatively little benefit. We're talking usually a few pounds in it. So keep things simple. Automate where possible as well. As much of your finances as you can put on autopilot, the better. If you can set your income withdrawals from your portfolio to increase automatically by inflation each year, say, then do that. Pay things by direct debit. Automate transfers between accounts, stuff like that, right? Every automation is a bit less time spent actually managing things. And then schedule your reviews. As much as you can automate, you'll also need to keep an eye on things. You can't get away from it completely. So try to set this up in such a way that you know when you're going to do it, and then you can not think about it in between times. Most of us generally work on a monthly financial cycle. Pensions get paid into our accounts monthly, maybe lunar monthly in the case of the state pension. Bills tend to go out at the same frequency, monthly as a rule. So choose a day of the month to make sure that all is well with everything, and then forget about it. In the meantime, say, right, okay, 10th of every month I'm going to check, or the 5th or the 1st, whatever. I will check that everything's okay, make sure that everything's been paid that needs to be paid, make sure the accounts are looking healthy, maybe make a note of my balances in my pensions and stuff. Don't really need to do that every month. But then forget about it in between times. Don't do this weekly. There's just no need. Knowing that you have a scheduled time to review things relieves you from having to hold everything in your mind, freeing up psychic energy, if you like, from mentally maintaining things will work wonders for your mental health. It's mostly about setting things up intentionally so that things largely look after themselves, and so that when you do need to review and intervene, it's really easy to do so. Third thing we need to do is to stay nimble. As we've said, life happens. Even the best laid plans can be thrown up in the air by circumstances, things we can't do anything about. How many of you listening to this or watching this had holidays booked this spring and summer 2020 and have had those completely kiboshed by COVID-19? Yeah, right. Because of the unpredictability of life, we got to stay nimble, right? Able to change course easily if needed. So how might we do that? Well, don't lock money up. I know that there are some benefits of locking money up for a few years, maybe to get a better interest rate, but don't go all in on doing that, okay? You can consider it for money that you've identified as being very unlikely to be used in the short term. But I wouldn't take out fixed term deposits for 2 years to get an extra 0.1% interest on what you could get if you just kept the money in an instant access account. I think the accessibility of the money is more important. It's arguably it's worth more than just a few quid extra a year in interest. Really important, keep good records. Know where everything is, so that if you need to be nimble, circumstances mean you need to check things out, you can reassess things at a glance, make quick decisions. If a crisis hits, the last thing you need to have to do is to sort of remember where your latest statement is or what your login details are for a certain account. Stay on top of things so that you can redistribute things if necessary, okay? Have a good filing system. Covered that back in season 6, episode 7, link in the notes. A little bit of work up front, maybe a couple of hours work, makes things much easier in the long run to manage. Make sure you know when things are due for renewal so that you can stay on top of them when they come around. Keep your online logins in good order as well so that you're not waiting around for password resets or whatever. I use a brilliant app called 1Password to manage all my logins. Absolutely swear by it. Others are available, but I love 1Password. Make sure you keep to your review schedule, right? We talked about having those monthly check-ins with your finances, and if you've kept up with those, you'll always be pretty much up to date. We've talked in past episodes about robust annual reviews as well. Those are essential for really staying on top of things. It's always a balance between automation and abdication sometimes, right? We can't forget about our finances completely. That would be abdication. And we have a duty to ourselves to remain as the captain and commander of our financial ships. Automation is partly just that, setting things to autopilot, and then also partly having a schedule of things to check in on regularly. You need to set aside the time to review things and then intentionally don't stress out about them in between times, okay? That balance between automation, intentional reviewing, and then forgetting about it in the meantime, that balance will enable us to be nimble, if we need to be, whenever life throws a curveball at us. And then last thing we need to do is to communicate intentionally. If you are in a life partnership with somebody, really, really helps if you communicate with each other about the finances. I'm going to talk about this much more next week, but for now, try to find a level of financial communication that you're both happy with. It's often the case that one partner takes the lead with the finances. That's absolutely fine, of course. Far be it from me to dictate to you how you should do it. But ideally, you would both look to communicate clearly and effectively about what's going on with the finances, make decisions together when needed. A lack of communication from one partner to the other can lead to all kinds of unpleasant and unnecessary outcomes, from sort of low-grade worry about money at one end to distrust and resentment at the other. Best avoid it. Part of enjoying your longest holiday is to make sure that you're both on the same page when it comes to financial management, and as I say, more on that next week. So as usual, folks, none of this is rocket science, right? The idea is to keep money in its place, not to let it rule you and not to let it detract from your enjoyment of retirement. Instead, you want your retirement to be enabled by your good financial management and not just driven by crisis management and reactive action. Putting a plan in place, automating what you can, reviewing regularly and communicating well, these are things which might take a little bit of effort up front, but which will pay dividends throughout your retirement, quite literally. Okay, hope that's helpful. As ever, questions and comments at the show notes, meaningfulmoney.tv/RP7. Now, as I mentioned at the start, probably in mid-July, we're going to be doing a founders launch of the third and final phase of Meaningful Academy, which we're calling Retirement Planning, just like this season of the podcast. There's going to be 2 modules out of the eventual 7, which will be available at launch. And it'll be a much deeper dive into setting up a retirement portfolio on a cash flow ladder that I've talked about a little bit earlier in this season, including how to rebalance it for different market situations, and also modeling retirement using the incredible Voyant Go cash flow planning app. I've got a couple of hundred people in the academy using Voyant Go already, and they all absolutely love it. So there's going to be tons of great stuff in Meaningful Academy, the retirement planning phase. And if you want to be kept informed about when that launch is coming, head over to meaningfulacademy.com and click to find out more about retirement planning. Retirement planning. Add your name and email address. There's a form there, and we'll keep you posted. Okay, here's a review from Keith, Scotsman in HK. Who says, brilliant podcast, an excellent podcast that speaks at a level people can understand. Complex made simple, sounds easy, but that takes skill. Well done, Pete, and keep up the great work. Feeling very inspired. Well, thank you, Keith. Really appreciate it. I'm glad that you're feeling inspired. That's the whole point. Did I say expired then? One of those things where I'm not sure I heard myself right. Hope you're feeling inspired, or I'm glad you're feeling inspired. Don't expire, whatever you do. I don't want that on my conscience. But take action. That's the main thing, right? I can equip you with information and the stuff you need to know, but you're the ones who've got to do it. So, Keith, thank you for listening. Thank you so much for leaving a review. If you want to do that, meaningfulmoney.tv/iTunes is how Keith did that. And that would massively help me out. It doesn't matter, though, where you're listening to me or watching me or whatever. If you can leave a review, please do. It just hugely helps. It keeps me near the top of the rankings, helps more people hear about the show and to subscribe. Okay, next time, I'm going to be talking about losing your life partner. And unfortunate, but obviously we all go sometime. And I want to offer some practical suggestions about how to be prepared in advance. Countless times, way more than I would like in my career. I've seen widows and widowers trying to deal with things that they were completely unprepared for. at the same time as they're grieving for the loss of their partner of many decades. But as many times, possibly more, I've seen the opposite, where things were left neatly ordered and the surviving partner was well informed and able to pick up pretty much where their deceased partner left off. So we're really going to be speaking to how to prepare for and cope with the loss of a life partner. Okay, that's it, folks, for this session of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Any questions or comments, go to the show notes, meaningfulmoney.tv/RP7 for retirement planning, episode 7. Hope you enjoyed it, folks. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you next time. Cheers. See you next week.